Everyone, we'll call the December 7th, 2010 meeting of the Jackson City Council to order. We'll ask Councilman Udecker to lead us in our invocation and our pledge. If you would, please rise.
This is the part that's different. Please sit down just for a second. Thank you. This is probably not going to be heard by anybody but you because I'm going to be walking away from the microphone. Before you have gentlemen and ladies that have served on the city council for a great many years, and today is my opportunity to give them something, a gift. Because today we will probably fight and argue over a variety of subjects, but otherwise we are brothers. And we should share in the gifts that we have for each other. So what I have is a gift for everybody here. And I wanted to give it to them now because that puts them in a good mood for what might happen later. By the way, just so you know that I'm the black sheep of the family.
No.
No.
Is that a motion?
Do you want to second it?
All in favor?
Say aye. Don, for you, sir?
Be the first one to die.
No, there's nothing in it poisonous.
Okay.
That's why it's got name tags on it, John.
Yeah. I only selected certain ones. Well, I have some.
There's something different about it, but it got name tags on it.
Okay. Thank you. You're welcome. Whoops, excuse me. It's an important time of year, as you know. Christmas is coming. And this one's name tagless, so I'll have to, who's ever left, to get that one. Harvey. For you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Okay, take up a little bit more of your time. Charles. Thank you, bro. Merry Christmas to you.
And you.
Mayor Gist, something for that sweet tooth.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's David. Something for you. Oh,
Is it sugar-free?
no.
I'll have to have somebody else.
Yeah, you'll have to share that with someone who, but it's sugar light.
It's all in the thought, Frank.
Thank you, Frank. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you. And let me see, who have I missed? Ernest? Oh, yeah, Ernest. There we go. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Doing all right?
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. Anita, because of the time you served with us.
Thank you, Merry Christmas.
And now let the wars begin. Please rise. Lord Jesus, wise men traveled for miles to bring you the first Christmas gifts. So may we too remember with thankful hearts the love that comes with each present we give and open. We also thank you for the amazing love you have for each of us, and thank you for the many gifts that you give us during this precious time on earth. We pray this in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nita, I think you can show all councilmen present for the meeting. And next item is the approval of the minutes of the November 2nd, 2010 meeting. Those minutes have been distributed to council, and if there's no objection, we'll go ahead and adopt those minutes as distributed. Item 5 is the invitation for public comment. Any of you here who would like to be recognized during any item, the new business, if you would make that known, and then I'll call on you at the time we get to the business. Thank you. Let me, before we go to our first readings, let me just acknowledge the presence of some people here this morning. I think Steve Smith is here, Director of the airport. Mike Phelan, VP with Pope Goff, I think is here. Also, we're honored to have a couple of county commissioners here. Unless we have somebody else come in, we have Commissioner Gary Neese, Commissioner Doug Stevenson with us this morning. And then also honored to have the former director of the Jackson-Madison County Library here, Mr. Tom Ott. Good to have you all here. Under first readings, Stan, if you'd come up, we have consideration of an ordinance to rename Ventura Parkway to UGN Parkway submitted by UGN Incorporated.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Morning.
This name change is a request by UGN. When this little stub street was named, it was part of just some generic names that were attached to these streets when they developed Tiger Jones, and it was Venture Parkway. I think some of you may still have the old version that had Ventura, but it's Venture Parkway. Because of UGN's commitment to Jackson and their expansion plans, it's going to put new jobs out there for people. We feel like this is well justified, and we would recommend that this be renamed to UGN Parkway.
Any questions of our planning director from council? If not, this is first reading, and I'll ask if there's anyone present who would like to speak in support or opposition to the passage of this ordinance. If not, we'll close the public hearing, and is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Have a motion?
Second.
Second. Discussion? Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Second item under first reading is consideration of the ordinance to close and abandon a portion of Walker Road located between Pleasant Plains Extended and Country Club Lane submitted by the planning staff.
This item is, you have the materials in your packet pertinent to this request. This is a portion of old right-of-way that existed prior to the construction of Pleasant Plains Road Extended. As you remember, Walker Road used to come down and had two legs that split, and there was a triangle in between. This is some right-of-way that was not taken in the construction of Pleasant Plains Extended and was kind of a remainder leftover tract that we're not using and don't have any use for. And Jackson Christian School owns the land adjacent to this property, and they would like to construct a sign on it, and because it was still shown as right-of-way, they needed our abandonment to do that. So this property will revert to them once we abandon it. And the Planning Commission and Planning Staff is recommending approval of this too.
Okay, any questions of council?
Yeah, one question.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Was our purpose for having this right-of-way was for what reason?
It was a part of the original Walker Road before the construction of Pleasant Plains Extended. When Pleasant Plains Extended was built on the north side of Country Club here, it took most of the right-of-way that was contained within the old Walker Road, but there was this little remnant that was outside the construction project that was just left over, that wasn't used as a part of the construction, and that's what this is.
Was it originally intended for a turn or anything else?
No, well, originally Walker Road split into two legs,
Yeah, yeah.
and since the new construction doesn't involve that design, we don't need it anymore for that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stan. We'll open the public hearing. This is first reading also. Open the public hearing to see if there's anyone present who would like to speak in support or opposition to the passage of this ordinance. If not, we'll close the public hearing, and is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Have a motion, second. Discussion? Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Item 7 is second reading, consideration of ordinance to rezone property located on the south side of West Orleans Street between White Street and Union Avenue from RG1 General Residential, RG1-1C General Residential Conservation, and IO Wholesale and Warehousing Districts to a B4 General Business District and containing 12.8 acres more or less submitted by the Jackson Community Redevelopment Agency.
This item was presented to you at your last meeting. It is from the CRA. This involves the property where the old street department was, and this zoning just consolidates the zoning under one scheme, allows them to pursue the master plan that's already been approved to this body. So you approved it on first reading.
Is there a motion for approval on
moved.
second reading? Have a motion?
Second.
Second. Discussion? Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Item 2, under second reading, Consideration of the ordinance to rezone property located on the west side of Union Avenue between Morgan Street and Fair Street from RG-1C General Residential Conservation District to RG1 General Residential District containing 4.3 acres more or less, submitted by the Jackson Community Redevelopment Agency.
Again, this is presented by the CRA, and likewise supports the master plan that they're working on, and we recommend it to you, and you approved it on first reading last week.
Is there a motion to approve second reading?
Question first.
Yes. Question.
Yeah, let me ask, just a couple of questions
Okay.
first. This has to do with the RG1C versus the RG1 that we're talking about before.
Yes, sir.
And we had, I think part of the discussion we had last week or last month was there is a review board that's going to take a look at these properties and decide as to the homes that are built there.
That's correct.
What criteria will they be reviewing those properties that will be different from the RG1 to the RC, to the C?
The guidelines that they'll be looking at are very similar. The only difference is the body in which the review will take place. The redevelopment area has a set of design guidelines that covers that area, and those design guidelines mirror in a lot of cases what the historic guidelines show in terms of compatibility and setbacks and styles and architectural materials, that sort of thing. It mirrors that, and in some cases, the redevelopment area even goes further than the Historic Zoning Commission in terms of looking at the impact of these types of developments on the area. So the historic aspects are not going to be removed in terms of the review. It'll just change what body reviews them, and because 90% of this project will be reviewed by the Planning Commission, we felt it was appropriate to have this one piece to go with the rest of it. And in terms of review, the review will not be any different. We'll still take the same criteria into play.
The bodies you're talking about, which two bodies are different?
If it was in the historic district, the conservation, it would go to the Historic Zoning Commission, and the redevelopment goes to the Planning Commission. And so, in this case, if you left it like it was, 90% of the project would go to the Planning Commission, and then you would have this one component that ties into the rest of it that would go to another body. And we thought for consistency and continuity, it would be better for the whole project reviewed by one body, so that's
Okay.
why we're
The
proposing.
planning commission you're referring to is the city regional planning
Yes, sir.
commission. So this is not the CRA's approving it or their board, it's still gonna be the city planning department.
Yeah, the CRA's already approved it as a part of the plan for that area, and the council has already approved it as a part of that plan. But in terms of the design, it has to go to the planning commission for design review, just like the ones we brought to you before.
I guess my question is more, a little more detailed than that when we talk about the differences. The RG1C versus the RG1, we're talking about the approval coming from the Planning Commission, but they don't necessarily take a look at the homes themselves or
They
the
do.
elevations now?
They
Is that
do.
correct? Okay.
They do.
Okay.
Any design review that we take to them is reviewed just like it would be through the Historic Zoning Commission. We look at elevations, we look at materials, and like I said, in terms of the conservation district, sometimes we refer to that as historic light. It's not a more stringent a review as the historic districts are, but the redevelopment districts are more in line with the historic districts than they would be the conservation. So I feel like the review will be more, more than it would be in the conservation if it went to the Historic Zoning Commission.
Well, if that's the case, what's to stop us from going ahead and changing the zoning from RG1C to just RG1 all the way through both the 5th District and Councilman Brooks's district?
Well, you could, and again, there's no reason unless unless you needed it for some reason, but when we did the conservation overlay of the Atlanta area and the area around Highland, that was the only tool we had available to us. That was before the redevelopment.
I'm not
before
talking about
design
that,
review.
I'm talking about
So-
now. Let's talk about today.
Yeah, today, we have no reason to take the conservation overlay off. Because it's basically, it covers an area that, that is pretty much contiguous, and we don't really see a need to remove that. In this case, the reason for doing it was to basically make sure that this part went with the rest of the project. That was the only motivation here. If we had a similar situation in the future, we might review it that way, but most of the time, we're gonna be dealing with single houses, 2 or 3 houses that the conservation and having the historic review.
Well,
and it's not gonna be
isn't it true, though, that this entire area is within the district itself, the redevelopment district, and that includes both Johnson Streets and Hatton and Wells and Morgan and so on. I mean, these are all under the RG1C.
But as we move into
Umbrella.
those, yeah, as we move into those, though, it's not like Union and Wells where we bought all the street, and so all the new construction basically is contained within a master plan for the whole project. The ones we have around Johnson and on Morgan are gonna be 1 or 2 houses that we interject into the existing fabric of the houses that are there versus rebuilding an entire street or area. So I don't think the conservation will hamper us in that case, because you won't be dealing with the reworking of streets and reworking of the tie-in to the rest of the development. But, going forward, I don't think it'll be a problem. Again, the conservation is a good tool. The only reason we would propose changing is if we had a reason to, like in this case.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
staying in relationship to the creek and/or ditch, what is the status of that with the EPA?
TDEC approved our plans to do what we've done over there. Before, if you remember, the Central Creek that they refer to was just a concrete lined, very, very grown up, not very wide, didn't hold water, good, and it just kind of became a litter magnet. We got TDEC's approval to go in and enhance that creek so that we would have a better looking water feature, and they were in favor of that because it gave us something that looked more natural and looked better and had more impact to the surrounding area than what we had before. So they are all in favor of what we've done.
Thank you.
To the guys in the sound booth, guys, we're getting a little feedback, a little ringing in our mics up here, if there's anything you can do with it. Okay, any other questions of the planning director on this second reading? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Motion, second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote passes 8 to 1.
Item 3 under second reading is consideration of an ordinance to close and abandon a portion of Farrah Street located between White Street and Union Avenue.
This was presented to you at your last meeting. You did approve it on first reading. This particular piece of Farrar Street, it separates a piece of the property that's gonna be used in that area over at Central Creek. So by abandoning it, we allow the property to be contiguous and be contiguous on one track. So that's the reason for it. And it was recommended to you by the planning commission. You approved it on first reading.
Is there a motion to?
So moved.
Second.
No second.
I do have a question.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I understand this particular closing. I'm kind of curious about what our future plans for White Street are as well. Are we planning to, in the future, close it as well?
The plans right now that I've seen are utilize White Street in serving internally.
Okay.
But again, if for some reason it becomes more advantageous because of the master plan or what the plans are with the hospital or those things, we may come back with an abandonment on that. But right now, there's no need to do that.
Well, that will probably include the rest of Ferrer.
Yeah, because we have to leave a public network to tie in, the streets that come into that area. So right now, we've got Shannon coming up, tying into Farrar as it goes back to Highland. And that's kind of where the public street is, and then the rest of it becomes a private development, and then Farrar picks up on the Union side. But if we have to go in and abandon anything else or change anything, we would have to again tie the public streets to give a public access through and out.
There's a couple of alleyways that are running through those properties that are in front of White, facing Highland Avenue. Those are also ours, as I understand, or private?
Yeah, the plans that I've seen do not remove any of those as a part of the development anyway. They just kind of become feeders for that property that fronts on Highland, because we don't have ownership of all those properties. You've got the credit union that we don't own, and you've got the property that's owned by the Smiths on the corner of Orleans and Highland, that beige brick building. They own that. So those alleys are used to service them, and so at this time, unless they became a part of the master plan and wanted to rework that, we have no reason to abandon anything at this point.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Stan. Item 8 under new business, let me ask the council if you would strike item number 2 from the agenda, that we still have the city attorney and county attorney working on that particular issue. Going back up to item 1 is a presentation of the Jackson Madison County Library Board of Directors. I think Brandon McWhorter, the chair, was supposed to be here, and I think he has some litigation, so I think Ms. Younger will make the presentation.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Brandon couldn't be here this morning. He got lucky and had other appointments. But he did provide you all with a letter that outlined our request, and I believe he's had an opportunity to meet with you during the agenda review and discuss our request, which is really a two-part request. One, that the city provide at the library with financial assistance to pay the obligation for the retirees to the state retirement fund. And our second request is that the city consider finding a new arrangement for financing the library, where the city applies their vision and leadership more directly, and finds a way to fund the library where it is still available to everyone in the county, but where we can sort of break free of some of the fetters that have held us back and kept us from growing over the last few years.
Okay, any questions from council to Ms. Younger?
Yes, Matt. Thank you. Good morning. How are you doing? Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you.
I've got quite a few questions, and the reason I'm even asking these questions, you've seen me quite a lot. I've been to most of the meetings. Would you agree? I mean,
Absolutely.
since 2005, I guess I've 90% of the meetings that have attended there. I was also at some of the meetings and when we had joint discussions where I guess a lot of people were there and they were discussing the LSSI involvement into the library itself. Would you or could you kind of give me or could you give this council kind of a breakdown of how we got to this particular moment from 2005 in a brief history of what happened between then and now, and why you think we're in the position we're in now?
It was determined by a vote of the library board to turn over the management of the library to LSSI. And that was done, I believe, in 2006.
Right.
And the reason for that was the library budget had not grown much over the years. But the cost of personnel, including health benefits and pensions and all those things that are so expensive, had grown. It grew every year. The budget wasn't going up, but the cost of manning the library was going up to the point where there wasn't enough left in the budget to buy books and materials, which is the reason the library is there. So LSSI was hired to come in and essentially raise the percentage, manage the library in such a way that we could raise the percentage of money that was being spent on books and materials so that we could make the library better for the community and really serve the needs of the community better. So we put a mandate in for LSSI to spend 20% of the budget on books and materials. They came in and they were able to do that. They were also able to guide us in the direction of opening the first library branch, which had been on the planning tables for about 20 years. They helped us find a way to get the books and materials in there without any capital contribution from the city and county. All of those are good things. The bad thing that happened was that in the process of changing the management, there was one liability for the library that was overlooked, and I believe it was overlooked innocently by every single person involved. There was an outstanding payment that needed to be made on an annual or monthly basis, I guess, for the people who had retired from the library or who were under the retirement system for the library before it went over to LSSI. Prior to that time, the employees had been treated as county employees, and so they were under the state retirement system. When LSSI came in, they're a private company, so they have a traditional 401K or a type of retirement system for their employees, and their retirement money went into there. So we didn't know this was there. I mean, the library board didn't know it, our bookkeeper didn't know it, our auditors didn't find it, the county finance department didn't know it was there, and somehow the state retirement system didn't send us a bill over all that period of time until July of this year. So nobody knew it was there, so we find ourselves today trying to make a payment for something we just didn't know we owed.
When, because I remember these conversations back in 2005, 2006, in this period of time, several times came up the discussion about insurance and pension plans and such. And if I'm correct, and you can say I'm crazy if I am, what normally happens, or what happens as far as the funding of the library, is the library creates a budget, they go to the county, they go to the city, and we basically budget half of your funding, both capital and operational expenses, and that is correct?
Yes.
And typically, I think the process works, then you tell me if I'm wrong, the county sends you one big check, and they send a bill to the city, and the city pays half of it, and it all goes to you, and you write a check for whatever it is you need. And I
believe
think that
that's
was,
right.
yeah, prior to 2006, and even after that, is that correct?
I think so.
Let me make one correction there, Sharon, if I'm not mistaken, Al, you may help me here. The budget from the library board is presented to the county commission and not to the city council, and not to the city. We simply expect them to
Okay.
approve the budget, then we pay half of whatever that.
So we really, yeah, that's right. That's probably more correct, yeah. That's good. So for all those years from 2006 prior, we wrote the checks to the retirement program, is that correct?
We meaning,
We meaning the library
yes,
itself? Yeah.
yes.
Checks were
The
signed
checks
by
were
the,
written by the library
yeah,
to the retirement.
by the bookkeeper, and I'm assuming that by the process, it was an automatic signature system, is that, you know, or you had to sign the checks, or someone had to sign the checks as well?
Yeah, it's a two-signature system, so.
Who
two
signs the checks?
people
The
Who signs the checks?
Director, or the chairman, or is
It's
it
the
treasurer?
board members. It's, the chairman, the vice chairman, and the treasurer are the three people who can sign.
So three, okay. And so the bookkeeper just creates the checks and they sign them?
Yes.
Frank, let me make sure I understand what you're saying. The TCRS payments were being made by the library at that point
Yes,
in time?
they were.
Okay.
The money was coming to the library, and then there was a check going out to the retirement fund.
So somewhere in the budget, there was some sort of line marker that this was going directly to that, I'm assuming.
There were
'cause
three
I don't
line
remember.
items at one point.
Okay.
There was one for health benefits, there was other benefits, and then there was a line item for retirement benefits. Part of the confusion came from the fact that after 2006, when we got our check from the county, there was still a line item that was held out that was labeled retiree benefits. And so when we asked the county, why are we having retiree benefits withheld now that we have a private management system, the answer was, it's to pay for the people who retired under the county system. So we assumed from that everything was being paid out of that line item, but that was not the case. It turns out that was only going to health benefits and not going into the retirement system.
Okay. I have a lot more to ask, but you've done a good job of explaining this particular part to you, and I thank you very much for your honesty in bringing all this up. I guess the other question I might have to be is there are a lot of questions in regards to LSSI's management. And these have been given to me through a variety of emails, and I could read some of these questions to you, but let me sum them up kind of briefly. A lot of people are really upset over the fact that the property is not being maintained properly under the LSSI management. I go in there a lot. My wife goes in there a lot. I am a library board card holder. and I'm not sure I see all of that, but then again, I do see some of it. What is your impression of, and I'm gonna give you the same, it's just an impression. What is yours?
I have not had gotten any emails or been contacted by anybody that had any complaints about the condition of the facilities.
Yeah.
You know, you and I have been through many, many board meetings together, and I don't think that's ever been raised at any board meeting, so this is kind of the first I have heard of it. My impression is that, yes, I mean, the library is getting twice as much use as it got 4 years ago. And we have no more money to maintain it, and we all know what happens with wear and tear. So it's not surprising that perhaps it's showing wear and tear. It's also a building that was built in the 1960s. You know, at some point, we really, really need to address the fact that we've got deferred maintenance issues. And that's one of the reasons that the library board is in front of you asking for help today.
I think one of the questions that I might have is what is your future plans in regards to the library? I mean, as far as the board is concerned, or what are your dreams, or what are your aspirations as far as both the North Branch or the downtown library? I mean, we've already talked about the fact the building was built in 1960. Of course, the previous building was built in 1900, so I can't
Yeah, I
really,
wish we were still in that one.
which I was in when I was a toddler, so yeah.
I wish we were still there.
You do. I kind of do too. But I'm kind of curious as to what your thoughts are as to where the city should be going with the library services.
Well, if you have studied what's happening with libraries around the country, cities are investing heavily in libraries because they've got a very important role. And if you look at major cities that are on the forefront around the country, you see big investments going into the library. We're not coming to you asking for a quick, big investment. We know this is not the time. We know that we need a systematic approach to get us where we need to be. The state has minimum requirements for how a library should operate in terms to serve the people. We have been working steadily, year by year, lots of man hours going into this, and with all that we've done, we still don't meet the state minimum requirements. We have about half the square footage that we should have for the people in this county. We have about 3/4 of the books that we should have. Now, that's one area where we've made some progress, but you have to put books into a library every year, because at some point, if you don't have the materials and things that people need, there's no point in having a library. It needs to be vibrant. We need more staff. Obviously, if you've been to the library, you know that interaction with people is very important. So we see that for the future of the library, we need to have a long-term plan in place where systematically we put money aside each year so that we don't have a big hit on the city or county budgets to take care of the library, but we maintain what we have and we put a plan in place to grow the library. We need to double the square footage that we have. We only have 2,500 square feet of space in the North Branch, but we're doing almost a quarter of the business of the entire library out of that 2,500 square feet. So it's obvious there's demand there. The building, the staff tells us that the building downtown is inefficient, hard to run, and costly. We need to have somebody tell us whether we need to upgrade that building or whether we need to build a new one. But these are the things that, if you're looking down the road, needs to be done. And we can't seem to get on a footing to look at those things and really plan in that direction because we seem to be caught up in battles over money all the time. So we're trying to find a way to break loose of that where we can continue to look forward.
I'll ask one more question, and this has to do with, again, that direction. We were talking about, I asked two more questions. One is we're talking about personnel. Now, when LSSI came in, do you know, before that, do you know the number of employees we had at the library at the time?
I can't tell you specifically, I think it was around 19.
And after LSSI came in, we had how many employees?
Initially, we had 19, now
But-
we're down to a full-time equivalent of about 16 and a half.
Okay, so we've dropped about 3 to 4. Some of those personnel are part-time, though.
Absolutely, yes.
The other question that I have probably has to do with the fact that, of course, the library board and right now, one of the funding commissions, which is the county commission, have had some disagreements. Some people will say that, well, I'll say it, kind of vocal disagreements in regards to the management of the library system. But basically, what I'm getting is you've got a direction that you want to go in, and the county is looking at, or the county and the city is looking at going in a more physical direction. Do you see that as the same as I see it? They're saying we're only gonna give you so much money because this is what we want done?
If you may.
That's okay.
I want to go back and back up. I think I misspoke when I answered the last question, when I told you what that FTE was. I think that's a wrong number. I think we're probably closer to where we were. The 16.5 is where we would be if we don't have the retirement funds back in the system. That's what we'd have to cut to. So I misspoke on that one. In terms of direction, yes, I would say that not being given any more operating money for 4 years and not being given any capital money at all, this year is a signal that, no, we don't want the library to do anything more than what it's doing right now. And then it's okay to not meet the state minimum requirements.
When you say capital, you're saying what?
Capital funding from the city and county. Our budget's 0 this year.
Well, but for prior years, there has been capital funding.
Yes.
This is the first year.
Mhm.
What was the request by the county, by the library board for capital funding?
It was over $100,000.
And what did it pertain to?
Pertained to expansion.
And that expansion was for the North Branch?
Yes, primarily.
And that was for rental property at the time?
It was a rent-to-own property, yes.
Rent-to-own property, okay. Thank you.
I have a few questions if I may.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Excuse my voice, I'm a little hoarse, but I just had a couple questions. Seemingly at this point that there are many unanswered questions between the board and the county commission. That's correct?
That's as my impression. We're scheduled to go back before the county commission at their December meeting to address some additional questions.
Okay, and I'm sure you're hoping at that time that many of these questions will be answered.
I certainly do.
Okay. And just quickly, as part of the long-term plan that Councilman Newdecker talked about relative to the board's vision and where you want to go, does that include a contract with LSSI?
We are currently under contract with LSSI. I believe there's approximately 4 years remaining on the contract we have with them right now. We review the LSSI contract annually. We have about a 10-point review process that we go through. We have the right to rescind that contract with 90 days' notice, but we do have a contract that covers. We feel like they have given us excellent continuity. I don't think that we could be operating the library today if we hadn't brought LSSI in. I mean, things were at a crisis point when we brought them in. We were at a point of laying off people and reducing hours. But under their management, we've actually opened a branch, we've added materials, and we reinstated Sunday hours. So we feel like they've taken us in a positive direction.
Okay, and you've been pleased with
We
what
have. I
they've
mean, the board has changed in composition during the length of time that LSSI has been on board, and as board members have come on, they've had the opportunity to examine them and participate in the review process, and all of their reviews have come back positively.
Okay, and as a part of the long-term plan, and you may have answered this, does that include a commitment to downtown Jackson?
As far as the current board and every board that I've served and volunteered for the library for over 10 years, and the commitment always is to have the major presence for the library in downtown. Whether it is an expansion of the building that we have now, or whether it's a relocation and the construction of a modern library, but we always see that the anchor for the library would be downtown. It's a great way to serve most of the county. If you look at a library service area, you're really supposed to have a library within 3 miles of all of your population. So
Okay.
when you place a library in downtown and you draw a 3-mile circle around it, you reach from North Parkway all the way down through South Jackson. So downtown is a wonderful place to serve most of the city.
Okay, and I'm sure you can understand our interest, or at least my interest, in that relative to whether or not we decide to help you out at this time or not, so.
I can
we're very,
understand
very-
that, and I think the library belongs downtown. I see it as an important part of downtown. I think that the traffic that the library brings into downtown is a very important aspect for a lot of businesses downtown.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, if I could-
Couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Councilman Dodge recognized.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
if I could make a recommendation to, put a committee together, meet with the library board and also with the county commission to see what issue we can come up with to bring back to you, and see what we could do to solve some of the problems that we're dealing with.
Okay, we have a recommendation. Councilman Wallace, let me go to you and,
Okay, I'll second his motion, then we can continue with,
okay.
It's only a recommendation.
okay.
We'll make a motion, I'll put in a motion form, but make a motion to form a committee.
Okay.
Second.
Couple questions. Me?
Yeah, we have a second. You can go ahead and
Okay.
and for your discussion.
Couple questions I had, you had mentioned that LSI has done a real good job. Do you feel like that they would have been able to do that well of a job had the retirement, payment, had they had to pay the retirement payments or that amount of money been reduced for them? I see it that they've done a good job, but I also see that they've done a good job because they did get a raise in how much was going to the library, because we've got, $120,000 that they spent on books and materials and improvements that they didn't have to spend on TCRS. So do you feel that there's a?
Oh, I think it certainly helped. I mean, that money was taken and rolled right into library improvements. And if that money hadn't been available, it would have curtailed what we've been able to be done.
Would LSSI probably have accepted the bid to run the library had the reduced amount been known up front, do you think, or?
I believe they would have. I mean, they essentially said, we'll come in and run your library for the budget that you have, and this is what we will deliver for the budget that you have.
Okay. And the other question I've got is on the state, you said there's some state mandates on the square footage, number of books for libraries. Is that a requirement that we meet, or is that just a suggestion that they've got?
We do not meet it, as they set minimums of how many books or items you should have for each person in the county, and how many square foot of service space you should have. And as I said, we're at about 50% of the space we should have, and about 75% of the books that we should have.
Okay, but I understand we don't meet it, but my question is there a repercussions for that, or is that just a suggestion the state has, or do they cut our funding for some reason or another?
Their requirement is that we continue to make progress toward it. As long as we're moving in that direction, their policy has been up to now that they wouldn't, sanction us or take any materials or resources away from us.
All right, are we getting resources and materials from the state?
We get some. It's mostly in the form of books that they loan to us, books that they put in the senior citizen centers, and some other support services that they
Okay.
provide.
So if we don't meet their mandates, at some point in time, they may cut that or not making progress towards it.
Right.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, to establish a committee to look at the second part of that, and that is, I suppose, that would be future operation, future funding for the libraries. Any discussion on that motion?
One other question I would have, Mayor, would we be better off to wait and see what the county does? I mean, they may step up to the table and decide they want to address the issue, or I guess the library still feels that they want help from the city on the budget amount.
Mr. Chairman, according to the motion, that would supersede this, assuming.
Yeah, we do
financial
have a
responsibility of the
motion and
library. Is that correct?
We do have a motion, a second, that we need to dispose of.
My question would be on the motion then, in regards to the appointments, is that to be made by the mayor?
Yes,
How many will be on the committee?
3 from each board.
Are we saying 3 from the county as well?
Yes.
How can we mandate that?
Yeah. Mike?
I would, as far as recommendations, Mayor, I would recommend 3 from the council, those 3 being Councilman Dodge, since he is the council liaison to the library, Councilman Cisco, Councilman Rom. If there's no objection, I can certainly make contact with Mayor Harris, Madison County, ask him to appoint 3 members of the county commission, and ask them to take a look at this entire issue and see if we can't work through it. If that committee is not appointed by the county and they feel like that it's not necessary, then obviously our city committee consider themselves dissolved. That would be my recommendation as a part of that motion.
Before, when you make the decision that it gets to the point of resolve, are we talking about dissolution of any agreements with the county in regards to payments?
I think as far as the strategies to be used in the future, that will be determined by our committee representing city council. I will ask them to come back before the council at the at least latest April meeting where we can make preparation for next year's budget. And I think that the 3 members of the council committee and 3 members of the county commission committee can certainly sit around the table, discuss the future of the library, see if we can work through this issue. If we can't, then we expect our committee to come back and recommend we keep it exactly as it is. Or if there is another method of funding and operation, then they can work through that with the council, with the committee from the county commission. Does that seem like a reasonable game plan?
Mr. Chairman,
You have a better one, Councilman Newdecker.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
Ms. Younger, I think the request that the city assume financial responsibility of the library, full responsibility, is a little premature. You're still reporting to the county commission. You say you're gonna meet with them in 2 weeks. I can't say what's gonna happen, but the request that we assume full responsibility, I believe is a little premature.
Let me clarify what our request is, but if I may. Essentially, we're not asking that the city immediately take full financial responsibility for the library. There's really 2 requests. One is that the city continue to pay the obligation to the state retirement system, which you all have stepped forward and kind of stepped into the breach and made sure that we didn't have an emergency by doing that. So we want you to make that official, that you'll continue to make that payment.
I understand that part, but I'm
Okay.
talking about your second request.
Second part is that the city find a way or be in charge of getting the library fully financed. Now, we're not coming to you saying how that should happen.
Yes.
But we're asking exactly what you're acting on is will you please take a look at, is there another perhaps better way moving forward next year, next budget year, for example, to handle the library?
Okay. So Mayor, we're gonna have a 3-member committee to study this, but in the meantime, the county commission, you're still in deliberations and with them, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, I'm fully supportive of this motion. The reason is, what we need is the word from the county commission. There's all kind of stuff out in the paper, there's all kind of stuff from individuals and everybody else, and we're not working with everybody else and working with this paper and all, we're working with the county commission. And we just need to know what their feelings are. The request has been made to us, we simply need to know direct from them what their feelings, and I think this accomplishes that. It gives us someone to go sit down and talk and say, what is the feeling of the county commission? Where do we need to go with this? And I'm fully supportive of
Mayor, if I may.
Todd's motion.
Excuse me, Councilman. Mayor, if I may, I would just like to request that committee make a full report to the council. I understand that they'll be meeting with the other bodies, but would hope that they would make a written report to the council moving forward on that issue.
I'll be fine, and again, I've kind of set the doors open until the meeting in April. At that time, the report can be made prior to that, but I think by our meeting in April that we need to know what the recommendation of the joint city-county committee is going to be, where we can continue with putting the budget together for next year.
Ma'am, you're asking for a report by April?
Yes.
Don't you believe we might need one a little earlier than that?
I said any time between now, today, and April, our
can
meeting
get it
in
tomorrow, right?
April, at that being the latest time. It can be next month or the month after.
Can I ask, let me show one more question then?
Sure,
The funding for the TCRS, as long as the city, agrees to go ahead and continue to pay that, and I know there was some concerns over having to lay some people off and do some drastic cutting between now and the end of the year, because your budget's half over already.
Yes.
If we continue to do that funding, are y'all gonna be okay on that, or do you have any idea?
Well, the obligation is $120,000, the city pays half, that's $60,000. We'll be going to the county trying to secure the other $60,000 at their December meeting. That request has been before them the last couple of months. Hopefully they will come through with that and we won't have to make any cuts, because $60,000 is a lot to take out of a budget, but it's even worse to take it out when half your budget year is gone.
Yeah.
If we do have to, we have a contingency plan, and the board has reviewed that, and we have pass that so that it would spring into action automatically if we do find out we're going to get the cut, because we have to act fast. But yes, we would be curtailing the hours and we would be laying off people.
I think the council is aware, and you have copies of the resolutions for both the city commission at the time the resolution was adopted and the Madison County Commission. You also have a copy of the agreement in 1960 where both forms of government decided to share in the cost of the library. So you do have that backup information. So we have a motion and a second, which would include the establishment of a committee to be appointed from Jackson City Council, those members being Councilman Dodd, Councilman Cisco, Councilman Rom, to meet with hopefully a counterpart established by and appointed by the county mayor with support of the county commission to meet and see if there's any way we can work through this and move the library off of dead center. And again, we would expect a report, as Councilman Brooks indicated, from that committee sometime between now and our meeting in April to facilitate putting the budget together for next year. Did I make that all inclusive in that motion?
I believe so.
Everybody understand?
Did you intend to have anyone from the library board on that committee, or just city county?
I think this, well, from Councilman Dodd's recommendation, his motion, I think we're talking basically the governing bodies of both the city and the county.
And that's
Not saying that the committee cannot call in members of the library board, staff, conduct public hearings or whatever they need to do to facilitate getting back to this council with a recommendation. Everybody understand? We good? Okay, we have a motion and I think we have a second. Don't we, Anita?
Yes, we do.
Okay, any additional discussion?
Question on the motion. Are we addressing only their request number 2?
The future
With the committee.
funding. The future funding. We'll come back to item number 1 after we handle this one.
Okay.
Okay, we good?
This is just on the committee, though.
That's on the
Right.
committee. This motion is on the committee, three-person committee. Any additional discussion? If not, council, please vote on that motion.
And the vote is unanimous.
Okay, we come back to the initial request that the city commit funding for its half of the retirement for this year for the employees and previous employees of the library. And I think council has a resolution to look at and consider adoption to take care of that until the end of June, remainder of this year. $60,000. If council approves the resolution, then staff will be back at our next meeting asking to approve an amendment, correct, Ms. Bell, to take care of the city's part of that. Is any questions about the resolution that you have?
I'm sorry, let me ask, this was not on the agenda.
Not on the agenda, but we could either consider the resolution. Resolution only takes one reading, and we could accept a motion, if that be more proper for the council to handle.
Well, the only question I have is parts of the resolution is basically 2 parts. The city recognizes its liability in the joint venture, and that the library budget be increased by the $60,540. Basically, item 1, we already understand that. That's part of the legal agreement going back to 1960. So that's already part of.
I was just trying to make the resolution complete, Councilman, is all that is. Going back to day
Second,
one,
yeah.
taking you through the end of
The
it.
second part, basically, that we're already funding the liability as it is right now, are we not?
By virtue of state statute.
And that
There is no
that is
way-
being taken out of the library budget that we've already established. Is that correct?
It is being paid in addition from the city from its fund balance to take care of our obligation through Tennessee Code to pay for the retirement. So it is being paid now by the city, and we'll need to approve an additional $60,000 from the city to complete this year's obligation from the city for retirement.
And this resolution is effective immediately, correct?
Correct. Any additional questions? We have the resolution. If council elects to go by resolution form, I see that being proper. Is there a motion
So
for?
moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any additional discussion on the resolution?
Basically, what we're voting on is just to increase our commitment to the library by $60,000 to cover
right.
the payment that we already said we were gonna pay.
Exactly right, yeah.
And that's $60,000 annually?
That's correct. That's one half of the total, owed to TCRS.
Well, that's basically just built on the conclusion of this year. We'll
That's
deal with
right.
it again in the next budget.
Deal with it again
but-
next year.
But
This-
it is to close the loophole for this year.
Take us through the end of June. Any additional discussion on the resolution? If not, council, please vote.
And the motion passes 8-1.
Thank you, Ms. Younger.
Thank you.
Again, we've eliminated item 2 in the new business. We'll go to item 3, is consideration of contract to lease Jones Creek Golf Course. Ms. White?
RFPs were received to lease the golf course, and we had one proposal, and that was from Pope Golf. The lease that you have in front of you is correct, with the addition of, if you will look at page 1, it has the correct name of Pope Golf. And then on page 10, we have their contact information. But other than that, the contract you have is correct. And we have with us today Mr. Mike Phelan with Pope Golf, and I would like for him to come up and talk to you about any questions you might have concerning this lease, and he can tell you a little bit about his company.
Let me ask the council, long night last night, we're facing this, we're facing this morning. Did we get finalized copies of the lease to the council?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you all have the finalized lease. Ms. White just went over 2 changes from the previous one you had. The reason for the delay, the attorney for Pope Golf had to look at it, I think, probably over the weekend or the last Friday to get,
So Mayor, the only difference between the original we had to look at and the one we got this morning was just the name of the company and what was the other thing you said? Oh, just addresses? So all the other, the guts of the lease are all the same?
It's all the same.
Okay.
okay. Welcome, Mike. Morning.
Good morning.
Again, my name is Mike Phelan. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Pope Golf, and first I want to say how excited we are about the opportunity to operate the Jones Creek Golf Course. We really hope that we can guide the facility to the vision that was originally intended for it, and also we hope to make the course a source of pride for the city and its residents. Before I go into what are our initial plans for the facility, I'd like to just briefly introduce you to Pope Golf. Our main office is located in Sarasota, Florida. We currently operate 2 golf courses there and have been involved in the management of several courses in that region. President of Pope Golf, Keith Pope, and I were originally associated in the 1980s. I don't have to admit it's that far back, but it is. Where we were involved in managing multiple golf courses in North Florida, including the Fernandina Beach Golf Course, which was a very fine 27-hole municipal golf course. Both Keith and I went on from there. We developed successful track records in operating multiple golf courses, primarily public access courses, and in my case, extensive experience with municipal golf courses. Between Keith, myself, and we have a senior agronomist, Gary Smither, who is recognized for his expertise in dealing with Bermuda grass greens. We've got over 75 years of cumulative golf course experience. What kind of led us to here is about a year ago, I sold 2 golf courses that I owned in central Illinois. Keith and I decided to join forces and basically expand Pope Golf further into the southeast and mid-south markets. And that has led us to Jones Creek and the potential we feel for this facility. We've started to develop our plans for the golf course. I think it's safe to say that initially we will concentrate on improving the overall playability conditions. There's a lot of work to be done on improving greens conditions, irrigation system, and in general, just improving the physical functioning of the golf course. At the same time, we recognize that we need to work to restore basically the reputation of the golf course and instill confidence in the eyes of the playing public in Jackson as well. We're very much a value-oriented golf course. We intend to introduce programs, pricing policies, which we hope will make the golf course as accessible and as affordable as possible to as large a percentage of the population as we can. Kind of in that keeping, we're looking into right now the development or the possibility of developing a first tee program here in Jackson, which is an initiative that's been very successful throughout the country. We'd like to develop men's and ladies associations, junior programs, and in effect, we hope that we can establish some policies that encourage civic and charity benefit type activities at the golf course as well. So in short, I think what we hope to do is basically make the Jones Creek Golf Course an integral part of the recreational offerings here in Jackson. And with that, I would like to just open this up to questions or comments, and I'll do my best to address those. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Questions of council as to the lease or methods of operation of the golf course?
I have some questions. Good morning.
Good morning.
Merry Christmas to you too.
Thank you. Same to you.
Sarasota, nice place.
Pardon me?
Nice place, Sarasota.
Yes.
I have some questions in regards to more on the financial end of this thing. You mentioned a lot of things that you want to do. It's going to require a certain amount of capital investment by your company or by the city in order to accomplish those things. Can you be more specific as to how much capital outlay, or I haven't seen a business plan, so I really don't know. How much capital outlay are you going to be required to put out front in order to do some of the things that you need to do?
Well, at this time, as the lease refers to, we are responsible for all, basically, the expenses and capital expenditures of
Right.
the facility. At this time, we've done quite a bit of due diligence in regards to the irrigation system, the pumping system, and we're looking at it probably in two phases, what we need to do initially, which would appear to be something in the neighborhood of $30,000 to $50,000. And then what we would need to do as we go long-term. I don't have those figures, but that gets considerably more expensive, but it's something we should look at over the term of a contract this long.
Landscaping?
To a degree, we're focusing most of our intention on the irrigation system, pumping system. The greens condition, we feel like will probably be something in the neighborhood of $10,000 to $15,000. That'll be an initial expenditure, which we're too late to take on anything now. We're really hamstrung by weather. So we're looking at the March 1st takeover date, at which point we would begin work with the greens.
Are you familiar with the history of the course?
Yes, I am.
Are you familiar with the financial history of the course?
I'm fairly familiar with the checkered history of the golf course, yes.
I'm going to ask this question of Sam. Sam, what's it been the average total revenue from the golf course over the last 5 years? Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Council will notice in the lease, I think it's for a period of 10 years with some additional time. There's also a physical number in there of $26,000, which would facilitate in maintaining the city's investment in turf and maintenance of the golf course. That number comes from what the city has committed over the past 10 years, maybe a few years less than that, each year as far as our investment. The plan is to use the Kate Campbell Robertson Trust Fund, the proceeds from that fund to pay the $26,000. Part of that trust indicates that, I think, Al, what is it, 1.2 million now? Just the proceeds from not using the principal to ensure that that the trust is putting some money into the maintenance and into the turf and landscaping and care of the park. So if we use that strategy, then obviously the citizens of Jackson would have no physical liability for Jones Creek Golf Course.
Mayor, a couple questions. I guess when you look at it that way, you kind of say that, but then that's $26,000 could be used for something else that would, you know, reduce the liability.
As long as it's in Kate Campbell Robertson Park.
Okay. A question for council, I guess. Did you get a chance to look and see whether or not if we did sell that property, could we sell it and put the money back in the Kate Campbell Robertson Park Trust Fund?
This is to legal.
Did you
Councilman
catch the
Weiss,
question?
I had emailed you yesterday, and staff was out on medical emergency and didn't get it to you. The trust fund was funding given by the Robertson family. The property, the 300 acres for Kate Campbell Robertson Park, was purchased with federal funding, HUD funding and Land and Water Conservation funding through the Department of Interior. And I'm not telling you that it could not be sold, but to sell it, to sell a park and keep the money that was given to the city by the federal government is at least an uphill struggle to get that done. If it were bought by the trust fund, then obviously we would look at it more seriously, but it was federal funding that was used to purchase the park, and to get that done would be almost
Okay,
impossible.
so it was federal funded
It
as
was.
opposed to the trust fund?
It was,
Okay.
yeah.
But it conceivably would be possible, but we don't know for sure.
It would be a tough
The
road
other
to
question
hoe.
I've got
for sure.
for the possibly the management company is that in our contract, we've got, you know, once you hit 500,000 per year, then you'll start giving some of that money back to the city to reimburse the city for their expenses. And then once we hit over 600,000, it's a higher percentage. For the city to kind of break even on this, it'd be about $1 million. Is that ever even conceivably doable to do $1 million a year? Or actually 500,000 a year?
Well, I think we probably wouldn't be here if we didn't think that the $500,000 to $600,000 threshold was achievable. I would say that to reach $1 million is probably questionable. We're required to see really what happens in terms of the economy and how much we can bring golf back to the forefront being played. I would say it's probably an uphill struggle. Our projections and interest in the facility are not based on reaching that level.
At what level are you looking at, shooting for, in a 5 to 10 year period?
Well, we are looking at in a 3 or 4 year period to reach the upper range of that threshold.
Close to $500,000 in sales and revenue.
Actually, between $500,000 and $600,000. If I may, I'd like to go back and address one of the questions that you gave me, and that's, we are aware of the checkered history of the golf course. We certainly take that into consideration, but we approach every project with basically a blank slate, and we look at two things. What do we think are the demographics and the market capability? And second, is the golf course capable of putting forth a product that will fit into a niche? And if the answer to those are yes, we look serious at it. And in this case, we felt like it was.
What's the approximate gross revenue for the other courses that you run?
I'm sorry?
The gross revenue for the other courses that you run approximately?
They vary by region. In the Central Illinois golf courses that I ran were between $500,000 and $750,000. Our Sarasota properties, again, year-round operations, generate probably between $1 million and $1.5 million in revenue. They also incur considerably more expense, so that the bottom line numbers don't change that drastically.
Considering that our golf course is probably not going to be in operation 12 months out of the year because we don't live in Sarasota,
Right.
you have a much shorter window of revenue. Probably what, from March to September, maybe October?
We generally figure that the revenue will begin to come in about the beginning to the middle of March, and begin to taper off after probably October 1, but flow through the month of November. Again, very similar to operations that I had in central Illinois. There's no question, though, that the main window is from basically May 1 until sometime in September.
May I ask a question in regards to this particular contract that Councilman Wallace brought up? And that's the gross revenues in excess of base annual amount. They're asking for 5% of gross revenues at $500,000 and 10% of gross revenue at $600,000, and this will become the lease. Are you comfortable with that?
Yes, we
That's
are.
a healthy chunk coming out. That's a healthy chunk of money.
We're comfortable with those numbers.
God help you.
Okay, any other questions from council as to approval of this?
Make a motion to
this lease?
accept it.
We have a motion made to approve the lease, a second. Any additional discussion? Not, council, please vote.
Motion passes 8-1.
Thank you very much, Mac, thank you. All right. Item 4 is consideration of contract for the lease of computers.
And the best bid received was from Dell Marketing, and these computers are $1,515 each for a period of 3 years.
Move the approval.
Move for approval, motion second, any discussion? Council, please vote.
The vote is unanimous.
Thank you, Ms. White. We have item 5 is consideration of budget amendments.
Good morning. This morning, we have 4 budget amendments to consider for your approval, please. The first one is for the Net Center to replace 6 heat exchangers because of heating problems at the center. Repairs will cost $22,700 and will be pulled from the remaining balance of unanticipated expenses, $21,938.92, and the rest will be a draw on fund balance, $761.08
That's $761.08, right?
on fund balance, correct.
So move.
Motion, a second? Do we have a second?
Yes, second.
Okay, have a second. Discussion, council, please vote on that amendment.
No
And the
discussion?
vote is unanimous.
Okay, the second amendment that you have today is a transfer of additional TIF money for the CRA fund based on new assessments from Mr. LaFoon. This is just transferring it into the CRA fund money that would be due for the TIF. That amount is $63,549.06.
Is there a motion to approve the amendment?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made and second. Now discussion, Councilman Udecker.
No, go ahead.
Okay, any additional discussion?
No, I have a question.
I'm sorry, okay.
Is that just
Councilman
extra
Wallace.
tax revenue that we've collected, or?
Right, that's, a base year was
Okay.
established, and when I did the budget, the only thing I could really put my hands on was the new medical office building at the hospital.
Okay.
So we got with the assessor's office, and that's where we came up with our $63,000. But then in the reappraisal, this was the reappraisal year, the commercial properties, if you know what it was, went up a certain percent. And then we had the new Walgreens building, so that my number was overall.
Okay, so this is actually just what we owe them, and we're just saying, okay, here it is.
Any additional discussion? Have a motion and a second. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
The third amendment that we have today is for City Hall is in need of a compressor replacement for an air conditioning system. Funds will be transferred from fund balance in the amount of $34,325 to the capital fund.
Is there a motion for adoption of the amendment?
So moved.
Second.
Motion, second.
Question? Capital fund, what part of capital fund are we removing this from? Is there something that we're shifting?
No, we're transferring it from the general fund into the capital fund.
Thank you
And this will
very
be under municipal building under City Hall.
And this is part of the second phase of our problems that we had before?
I believe this is so you'll stay cool in the spring, from what I
Thank you so
understand. So,
Any additional discussion? Council, please vote.
The vote is unanimous.
The fourth amendment that we have, and the last one for today, is we have been awarded the Tennessee Agricultural Program Enhancement Grant for the farmers market, in the amount of $2,500, and there is no city match required. This is total state funding. Just need to get it on the books.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion, second.
Second.
Any discussion? Council, please vote.
The vote is unanimous.
Thank you.
Final item on the agenda is consideration of invoices over $10,000.
So moved.
You have a motion, second. Discussion, council, please vote.
The motion passes 7-2.
There being no further business, meeting is adjourned.